Macy's has all of your Grill Master essentials for Father's Day. Stop by to get our hand-trimmed chicken breast and certified Angus beef patties that are ready to grill, so Dad can have his favorite dinner. Make sure to browse our bakery to find the perfect no-work Father's Day treat with our decadent peanut butter bars or famous donuts. Right now, you can get boneless beef ribeye steaks for $12.99 per pound at Macy's. Shop these Father's Day essentials in-store or online at Macys.com through June 18th. Macy's, happy shopping!
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. This is the Change Ready series, which is brought to you by Behind the Human and Malosi. And it's a series that we're really doing everything possible to future-proof our minds and thrive in an era of unprecedented change. And today, we have such a perfect human to talk about this topic because I've been glued to his book for the last probably, 2.5 months, just really taking it in slowly, and it's been so insightful. I've got so many post-it notes in there, highlighters. I've just mentioned to him before we hit record. I've already used it live in the field with teams and so forth. So who do we have? We've got Frederik, who is Google's first Chief Innovation Evangelist, founder of Google's Innovation Lab, and the author of What's Next is Now, How to Live Future Ready. Brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me. And I need to correct you. I'm not a perfect human, so
that's all good. But
I think no one is. But so
fair. You're but you're I don't know if I said perfect, but you're the perfect human to be on this, I guess is the framing.
That's a better framing.
Think. Yeah. So before we get into the topic, 'cause there's so many little tangents that I want to jump off or jump on around this topic. If I cut the bio, the book, all of that kind of stuff from the equation and just get really close to the human here on the other side of this camera, who are you?
Yes, it's such a great question, Mark, and I love that you start every show with that question, right? And isn't that fascinating that we think about this question maybe for our whole life, right?
Yeah.
Who am I, right? And you expect me now to answer it like in a couple of sentences?
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's even possible, but maybe just to go a little deeper on that question, right? Most of us maybe default to a response that is defined by what I would consider external markers. So it's positions we hold, right? I'm a manager or I'm a CEO. It's places we belong to, like I'm from Berlin, right? Or I'm from, Germany. Yeah. Or roles we play in society. So it's that answer around like I'm a dad, right? Or I'm a mother, or, I'm part of this community and so forth. And that's mostly what we communicate about our identity. But I think this is very limiting, as it really overlooks the internal dimensions, our values, our passions, and those beliefs, and maybe unique ways we impact the world. And so it's as if we are defined by the what's we do rather than the who we truly are, right? So why not answering with something like, I'm someone who loves to inspire others to see the world differently, right? And I think that could probably be a description for you.
Yeah.
As it is for me as well, right? Because I'm actually really someone who loves to inspire others to see the world differently. So this perspective, I think, gives us a move from, or a shift from what to why, from external to internal, from titles to purpose, and maybe from what society expects from us to who we truly are. And I think that is an important shift we should make, because we find it a more powerful and a more connected way maybe to live our lives. And there's one more thing I want to share with you, and that is that there are two maybe important moments in our lives. The moment when we are born and when we find out why, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm still on that quest to find out why, right? I have a couple of hunches and signals, but I'm still on that journey. And for me, the more important question is, how are you? And how do you want to be in the future? And that's the question I ask a lot of people to think about when they think about their future, because I might answer now your question, not who are you, but how are you, in a way that I'm feeling energized and radically optimistic, especially as I continue to explore new ways to help others to live a life where the future is not happening to them, but where they make their future happen. And so each day, as a father of three, and here in my little forest dome, I have the opportunity to connect with amazing individuals like you, Mark, dive into thought-provoking conversations and questions that we explore, and really help some people to grow what's next for them, giving them encouragement and a little bit of confidence. So here I am, not answering your question, just kind of like diving right into, maybe we should ask ourselves, how do we want to be in the future?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I mean, I will ask though, because I mean, you mentioned this obviously in your answer to who you are, that at one point, and I remember the moment when this happened for me, but was there a moment that you remember where things shifted for you, when you shifted out of, because I feel like everyone has some sort of moment of, well, wait a second, like I am not, my title or what I'm doing, or like things become expanded. Sometimes there's an event, sometimes, there's a bunch of different circumstances for that. But I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, because then it really, it opens up a whole other world of possibility, especially when it comes to our internal empire. So was there something for you that you remember that shifted your perspective around who am I?
I think that happened probably in the last 2 years, right? When I was on that journey to write the book, and really trying to find my why, right? And finding what is my purpose, and really owning that as well. And I think that was an important 2 years. And I'm still now kind of figuring out how do I want to be in the future? What are these attributes, right? Is it kindness? Is it compassion? Is it empathy? Is it curiosity? All of those things that I want to grow more and develop over the time. And I think that's just an interesting question that I think everybody should sit with more often, to really think about, how do I want to show up tomorrow, right? With my friends, with my family, in my community, and in the world.
Yeah. Why the future? What is it about the future that, fires up your curiosity and gets you excited and motivated? And to be honest, I mean, it's writing a book is not an easy thing to do. I mean, to spend time crafting, and it's beautifully designed, and just a really, you and the team have done a really great job in this piece. And when I look at all of the other work that from your background, there's always this lens of the future and innovation and so forth. So why? Where did that come from?
Maybe it's that simple realization that the past is gone, right? And it's not possible to change. The future is the only thing we can influence, right? And so my whole life, I think, was really focused on, how can I influence the future, and how can I make a better future happening? And that's really what I've seen, with individuals and organizations, that they really harness their potential to innovate and lead change. And I wanted to really share these insights and provide a roadmap for others to develop what I call their future-ready mind state. And this book is really a culmination of my experiences, experiments I've tried, and some incredible stories of these these people I was able to work with, the future readies, I call them, who have inspired me along the way, and I've been able to train and coach in my career. And so the goal is really to empower others to take control of their futures and create the lives they truly want. And there is, so much that we can talk about when it comes to the future. And I think that what I realized is that we just have a very strange relationship with the future, right? Some people try to avoid it, literally, right? They don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it. They rather talk about the past, right? Which is comforting. Some people, talk negatively about it, right? They talk about this dystopian visions of like, oh, everything's going to be going down and everything's going to be bad and so forth. And then we have a group of people who really are excited and share a positive vision of the future and really try to move towards that vision every day. And I think that's the part of the group of people I want to be part of, right? And I want to see more people doing that, because that's the only way I think we can move towards a better future as well.
I mean, I 100% agree. And I think because of that, though, and I imagine you see this as well. I mean, I get to work with a lot of teams and individuals and so forth, and I'm very excited and optimistic for the future. Because there's a lot of uncertainty that could lead to a lot of really great opportunity and beautiful experiences and whatnot that we can't even fathom at this point. But in the big but, and the whole reason for this series is I'm very concerned as well, because I also feel how fragile the population, especially in North America, but I can probably say this globally, is when it comes to their minds. And that scares me, because, with the future, with change, with innovation, technology, and all of that, they bring beautiful advancements, but they also bring a lot of uncertainty and change. And we don't seem to do super well as humans with that. And in an already very fragile and kind of disconnected and polarized state that it feels like the world is in, my question is where do we start? For the person on the other side listening, like, yeah, this sounds really interesting. I want to be there, but mentally, I feel like I can't get there right now. So I guess we should define, like, what does it mean to live future ready for us as a society?
Absolutely, yes. And there's maybe an easy starting point when we think about the future, right? There's usually like a couple of words that come to our mind when we complete that sentence. The future is, most people say like it's chaotic, it's uncertain, it's exciting, whatever it is. But when we ask ourselves a different sentence to complete, which is the future I create is, there's usually a different set of words that comes to our mind. And what happens is that we move away from thinking about the future as something that is in the distant. It's it's that big thing that we can't influence. We move the future closer to us, and we put ourselves into the picture of the future. And I think that's important that we do that, because there are two worlds, and you talked about this a lot. There is an outer world, right? That is the society, it's the technology, it's the economy, it's politics, whatever it is, right? That's the outside world. And interestingly, that outside world we mostly can't influence, right? That's just happening, right? It's the weather's going to happen, right? But there's another world. It's the internal world. It's our inner world. That is our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, our spirit. And that's also something that we only partially can control, right? Thoughts are arising, right? They come from the universe, and they appear. And emotions are appearing, right? Usually triggered by a situation or a moment. And what's interesting is that there is a control that we can have there is a lever that we can use, and this is our response to these things, right? We have an ability to say, hey, I can respond in different ways to situations that are either happening to me or that I want to create. And the most interesting thing is when these two worlds come together, right? When the outer world meets the inner world, then I think the magic can happen. And then we need to really understand, like, how do we respond? What's our mechanism? And I just want to share a very brief story that really brought that for me to life, where I realized, wow, we have control over our responses. So our family, we love to go sailing. And so last time we went out, we stopped at a harbor in Capitola here in, close to Santa Cruz. And there is no harbor where you can go into, so you have to kind of like tie your boat up at a buoy, right?
Okay.
And there's a couple of fishermen that, that can pick you up from your boat and drive you to the beach, which is very nice and very convenient, right? So you call these fishermen, they come over, and then they take you to the beach. And that evening, we had a couple of friends that were waiting at the beach, and we met up with them. And so I asked the fisherman if he could pick up us a little later, like after 6 p.m. They usually stop at 6 p.m. So I asked him, like, hey, can you pick us up at 7? Is that even a possibility? And he says, yeah, absolutely fine. I'll wait here on my boat. That's totally cool. Happy to do that. And turned out, like, we ended up in long conversations. We ran late, and 7:30 I called him and said, hey, super sorry, like, we ran late, but we're coming now. So we came at 7:45, and I apologized, and I expected that he was angry, right? Obviously, like,
Yeah.
we're late, like, you can be angry with me. And I said, like, I'm super sorry, we ended up in a great conversation with our friends and so forth. Deeply apologize that we are running late. And his response was incredible. What he said is like, thank you so much. And I paused, looked at my wife and looked at my kids, and I'm like, did I just understand that correctly? Like, we made a mistake. We ran late. He said, like, no, thank you so much. And I asked him, like, why do you say that? And he said, because you were late, I was able to catch my dinner. I was able to catch a big fish, and I probably would have not been able to do that if you were on time. So he was thanking me for being late. And I told him, like, this is incredible. Like, thank you for teaching me something like that, with my kids and with my wife there, that you can be angry, right? Which is totally fine. Most people probably would have been angry. You can be like, annoyed and like, yell at people like why they're late and so forth. Or you can see that as an opportunity to say, like, hey, I just caught, the biggest fish of my day and of the day. And, I can thank the people for being late, right? It's up to you.
Yeah.
And that is just a small thing that whenever we end up in situations where we have a choice in how we respond, maybe next time think differently. That don't go to your default, like being angry or being annoyed if you're stuck in traffic or waiting in a long line or, somebody is late or whatever it is. Try to make use of that time because that's in your control. And then, choose a different response and see how happy it makes you and how happy it makes the other person too. So that was an incredible lesson that I learned from a fisherman here in Santa Cruz.
It's a great story, great lesson. And I mean, even a lesson on my side too, because I, like you, I mean, your default response or thought was, he was going to be upset. My mind was already projecting that the end of the story somehow is going to, you guys had to like swim back to the boat or something. Like he just, there was no option now. And that's somehow something, you made it, you obviously made that swimmer. But like the point being, as soon as you kind of provided the punchlines, like, well, why is my mind automatically defaulting to like a negative outcome?
Exactly.
Right. And I think everyone listening to it's the question I can hear them probably asking me to ask is, how do we zoom up and pause our default response? Like, because it's not somehow we've been programmed, to not do that for the most part. And have you found, like, are there practices, are there tools that have helped you personally or that you've witnessed over the years that help us train our minds to have that micro pause before reacting versus responding maybe in a different, way?
Yeah, there's so many things that we can train ourselves in, right? We train ourselves, since the 50s and 60s. We have this focus on training our bodies, right? And I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, full credit to him, did a great job in making that a movement around physical fitness, right? Where we now see, I think, more gyms in the world than actually restaurants in hotels. So it's something that is fascinating. And when you think back, like the beginning of that, physical fitness around jogging, right, was also something in the 50s where like some people started to run and then others stopped them and said like, hey, what are you doing? Who are you running away from? And they said, no, we're just exercising, we're jogging, right? And it wasn't a thing like in the 50s. And that's just, 74 years back. And I think we are now at a moment where we need to understand that we can train our minds too. It's actually possible. We can exercise our minds to not go to the default responses or reactions that we usually, want to communicate. And with the story I shared with the fisherman, right? Like probably everybody, and that's just a natural reaction. Things like, oh, this guy Frederik, how can he be late? And like that's totally irrespectful. Or like, of course, the fisherman needs to be, angry and annoyed. But that's, it's one choice that we have. We also have another choice to respond differently. And the fisherman showed me that you can do that. And what's magical is that as soon as we choose a different response, an opportunity or multiple opportunities will actually arise. And who doesn't like to have more opportunities in their lives?
Yeah.
The opportunity for the fisherman was to, make us happy and feel surprised, teach us something, and, make him happy. And obviously kind of like have a different emotional feeling throughout the evening. And what's also magical is that, we've been in contact since then because I wanted to learn more about, his way of thinking and his approach to life. So last time I took one of my children out for a fishing trip together with him. And it was incredible, like the lessons he taught me beyond kind of like the one response that he has about around thanking people if they're late because, he had an opportunity to catch his food for the evening. We're like just amongst one of those lessons. But what I want to say is that we all have the opportunity to not just exercise our bodies. We have an opportunity to exercise our minds. And as soon as we do that and train our minds every day, we see more opportunities in our lives and more opportunities, not just for ourselves, but opportunities for others too. And how incredible is that? So one of the practices that I think many people default to is meditation, right? Which is a powerful way to just understand how our minds work, right? How thoughts arise, how thoughts are changing, how emotions are arising, how you feel these sensations on your body, and how those are changing and so forth. And I think just engaging in a couple of minutes of meditation, and that's what I'm doing right after I get up, I walk up here in the forest and just sit down for a couple of minutes and trying to meditate, right? Which there is a focus on trying, right?
Yeah.
Which is good. And that really helps me to have a very different start into the day. Again, like many opportunities arise in your mind where you see like you're moving away from worrying about the future towards like being excited a little bit more about the future, and then just showing up differently for your family and the people you're meeting with. And I think that's something very powerful we all can practice.
The other thing that I've picked up from you, and as someone who is fairly obsessed with collecting and having fun with questions as a kind of a universal language, your book and your stories and everything and lessons, there's a lot of really powerful questions. Like I would say I was aggressively highlighting the book. And I think that's another way. Of course, meditation is one I subscribe to as well, and breath work I find a beautiful way to start the day. But this last question, which I think was near the end of the book, and this one just hit me right in the front of the head in all the right ways, and it was, what can I do today to create opportunities for myself tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of a situation where that question doesn't apply.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if you just hang on that question for, like you said, I mean, just like we do physically. Okay, this week I'm going to focus on training. I don't know. There's going to be leg days and arms and so forth, or I'm training for a race or a bike race or something like that. There's, you anchor your training. I think we can do the same thing for our minds, and just as long as we can make it as simple as possible, so we actually do it. And even just using a question like this for a week, say, I'm going to commit to asking that question. And like anytime I'm at decision points, just, oh, wait a second, I've got to ask that question. It takes seconds, right? But so powerful, like potentially years of outcome from seconds of reflection. Wild.
It is wild. And it's so simple, right? And at the same time, so powerful. And I think that's what I really want to give people, is that we don't need to spend months or even years to learn a theory or a framework or whatever it is, right? It's those simple things that we can do that really create an opportunity for us. And the question that you shared, what can I do today to create an opportunity for me tomorrow, is something that it doesn't have to be something big, right?
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, call a friend that you haven't called for a while, and tell them something you appreciate about them, right?
Yeah.
And see what the response might be, right? Or like, help your neighbor bringing out the trash, or like whatever it is, right? Or the next time you see someone who is, in a challenging situation, right? Offer them a hug or whatever it is. And these are small things that we all can do, which doesn't cost anything, which doesn't take a lot of time. But I guarantee all of those things will create an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
And that's powerful, and that's simple. And so I'm always surprised, like, why don't we do that more often, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we, share those small acts of kindness or compassion or curiosity, like with each other, which exactly are your superpowers that you have and that everybody has. And I think more and more we should really help people to understand it. So that's why I appreciate you doing the work, with individuals and teams, to really help them, even with things like breath work, which I haven't discovered for myself, but I'm super open to experiment with it.
Yeah.
I've tried it a couple of times with incredible individuals. Actually, one of the world record holder of holding his breath. I met him in Copenhagen recently, and he could hold his breath for, I think, 16 and a half minutes. And he does it through meditating, right? He really used the practice of meditating to actually do that. And so
Who is that? If you don't mind, I'm gonna look him up.
Yes.
It's not Wim Hof, is it?
No.
No.
And I forgot his name.
Oh, it's okay. I'll look it up. Yeah, I find breath work. I mean, it came up because of the show essentially, because as you're experiencing, I'm just trying to pull practices and use cases and whatnot, so that all of us can try different things and whatnot. And breath work kind of came up in that vein. And I've always had I'm better now actually, but I've always had a hard time meditating. It's probably more of a perspective thing as I'm growing to really sit into the practice. So I found with breath work, even if I did 2 or 3 minutes, and I use an app called Othership, which has been really helpful. You feel it immediately.
Mm.
And it's if my morning routine is disrupted in some way, whether that's the kids don't sleep well or something like that. I mean, I think we can all resonate with things like that. The non-negotiable in my routine is I'm going to do a couple minutes of breathing to at least start the day feeling, well, I feel it, but then also feeling like I'm starting on my own terms. You're not in like this survival catch-up mode right out of the gate. And I just find it's the quickest kind of punch to get at that state. And a lot of teams and companies, they haven't experienced it, or it's I don't even use that language. It's kind of a surprise, other than the organizer knows, because then people think that, well, wait a second, like, what are we going to dim the lights and light a bunch of candles, and we're going to put on robes and beads, and which there's nothing wrong with any of that, but for some reason, that shuts people down, right? So no, just you see me right now, we're going to do it like this, and it's always amazing. Especially when you look around the room and, for me, sometimes I'm like, that person probably would never do this. Everyone's, their eyes are closed. The energy in the room shifts immediately. So like, look what's possible in the matter of minutes. So like the next time your mind feels like it's looping or you're in this mental torture, I mean, here's one thing you can do, or ask some of the questions that we've been talking about, right? To shift perspective. Like that's what lights me up, and why I'm equally so grateful and excited that, people like yourself are writing books on the topic or coming on the show, because it feels really nice to be part of what I would say is at least today, a movement that, I agree with you. I think in maybe 5 or 10 years that it's going to be the norm, like physical fitness, but we're not there yet. So there's an excitement of, hey, this is actually something, a bit of a competitive advantage in personally and professionally. If you tap into this, look out. It's exciting stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how would you, push this movement forward? What's the ways that you find in your work are really successful in helping people to open up, to be willing to experiment, to give it a try? As you mentioned, like, because as soon as they are open to it and they try it once, they see the power of it, right? They see like this is something I can do. This doesn't take much time, or this could hopefully take more time because it's something that really is beneficial to me, right?
Yeah.
I hear this excuse a lot from people. Oh, I don't want to have another thing that I need to do, right? I'm like, no, that could be the only thing you do.
Yeah.
Because it's such a thing that creates benefits in terms of like your health, your mental health, longevity, whatever you want to consider as categories that are interesting to people. So what are some things that you find helpful to push this movement forward, where we focus more on mental fitness alongside with physical, exercising?
Yeah. Well, just one point before is just the notion of these practices. I don't have time, or I can't add in another thing. And I agree, but I think that's where we have to be really careful, because for those who have maybe not experimented, they just don't know, right? Like, and it's the same thing as physical fitness. If you're starting from zero, to get to 0 to 1 is kind of usually the hardest loop. So it's I've noticed it's almost have to trick people a little bit with the language, especially in the corporate space. Like, okay, so you've got massive growth targets, or you just went through a bunch of change. Okay, so how's everyone feeling? Well, they feel stressed and overwhelmed, and their minds are full. I mean, that's the consistent check-in I get from teams. Okay, well, that's not going to lead very well to, achieving what you want to achieve. So, starting with the business metrics until we can get to the point of that stuff doesn't actually matter. Like, we're talking about just how do we wake up feeling good more days than not? And guess what? If you do that, all of that other stuff's going to happen, right? But I can't go and say that because it's too fluffy in today's world, at least. So it's like anything, I think, in sales. It's just meeting the person on the other side with some sort of relatable story. And this is, selfishly why I keep this podcast rolling as well, because every week there's another story, another perspective. You're a perfect example of this. Like, you've written this beautiful book. You've held some really massive roles in companies that we're all aware of that are leading the world in innovation. We should probably listen, And that at least opens up the conversation. Then all of a sudden, well, wait a second. So what can we do? And surprise, surprise, the nice thing about, I think, any of these practices, I mean, you're not inventing them. I'm not inventing. They've been around since the beginning of time. So it's like, I don't have to defend that they work. They've literally stood the test of time. It's just about, I think, integrating them with, okay, well, if you're doing weekly status calls, then why don't we do a couple rounds of breath work to start that and just clear out all that mental noise and clutter? And guess what? People are going to be checked in. They come together as a team. We're going to be talking about topics at a much deeper level because we've let go of whatever might have been bothering us in a matter of minutes. So it's just trying to find, no different than us personally and with physical routines, like where are those moments where we can just make some micro shifts that then turn into, for me at least, like, it's been a good 15 or so years, I've got a good 2 hours early in the morning where it's all mental, physical, basically some sort of well-being and mental fitness. Like I said, sometimes that's thrown off, but then the non-negotiable is some breath work. But I know, because I know the difference. Like, I've felt the difference. So to come up and say, to suggest that to someone that has never started, that doesn't work. But hey, when maybe your first cup of coffee or when your first cup of tea is steeping in the morning, and asking the question that we've been talking about, like, what can I do today to set myself up for the future? Or how do I feel? One word. Okay, I feel stressed. Well, why? Like, where's that in the body? And how do I want to feel today? Like, seconds. Takes seconds, right? And then I find through that, like, finding those micro points to inject it in so it doesn't disrupt the current routine too much. Then we just start becoming more and more self-aware. And it's like, well, I want more of that, right? And then it leads and it kind of cascades from there. But I basically have the same question for you, because I wanted to ask, I know you've done a lot of work with Google in the past and so forth, and other teams as well in this work. But just knowing how stressed and overwhelmed the population at large is right now, and especially I feel this when speaking to university students and whatnot, and a younger generation feels even more so, which is so sad. And I really want to do everything we can to help. Like, how would you frame this kind of work, or how would you, if you had to give the commencement speech or something, like, what would be the core message to that group from you?
Yes. It really comes down to that shift in our relationship with the future, where we shouldn't ask, what will the future bring? I think that's the question that is on a lot of students' minds. It's on a lot of, corporate leaders. It's on everybody's mind, right? What will the future bring? And, when we look at, the future in terms of elections, technology, climate, all of those things, right? We are looking for predictions, and we're looking for, like, the glass bowl, and like trying to really anticipate, like, what's going to happen. And that is stressful. That literally stresses us out, because it's it's unknown, and there's so many signals and so many factors that are out of our control. So I would help students to really not focus on that question anymore. What will the future bring? Ask instead, what future do I want to create? Because that is something that you have control over. And then don't look at the future related to like where we started off, like, in terms of like a position you want to hold, or a place you want to live, or a role that you want to play in society. Focus on how do you want to be?
Yeah.
And that is something that could be one word, right? It can be like kindness, where you say like, hey, I don't want to be more kind in the future, right? What are some things I can do today? And using your language, like, what are some micro shifts I can make to be more kind towards myself, towards others, towards, the work I'm doing? And as soon as you make those shifts and you show up a little bit more kind, then you're going to build the future that you want to see happening and the future you want to create.
Yeah, you start seeing the evidence for it.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think then you're moving towards something that is exciting to you, that is something that you have full control over. And your mind is going, really, really with you on that, because then your mind feels like, oh yeah, I have control over that. I love that, right? Because our minds, they don't love uncertainty, right?
No.
They don't like ambiguity. They like certainty, right? That's why we love planning. That's why we love the weather app, right? And we look at it, from time to time to say like, oh, I want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, if it's going to rain or if it's going to be sunny. But move away from that and say like, hey, if you can choose these qualities, these deeply human qualities, choose a couple for yourself, and trying to really visualize yourself living in a future where you show up maybe more kind to yourself and to others. And that's the future you can create. It's simple but powerful. And I think that would be probably like the main takeaway for people when I engage with individuals or teams.
I love it because it's just so accessible, and it starts with what I'm hearing is we're starting with establishing our perspective on the future, and setting indirectly by doing that, setting some intentions, like you said, in terms of how you want to show up for yourself and others. And what I love about all of that is then just by default, by even just taking the time to slow down and think about that, you start to see the evidence. You start to, the universe, the world, however you want to describe it, kind of starts to form the path to achieve, those intentions. And then if we keep going and we continue to train our mind and bring in these different practices and so forth that allow our minds to be a little bit lighter, you see more of those signs, right? Because it's not all. It's like the pond, right? When you like stir up a clear pond, I mean, nothing's changed in there in the sense that at one point you could see the bottom of the pond, but now you've stirred it up and you can't. You have to let it settle. Mm-hmm. So if we can, let our mind settle a little bit and kind of reconnect to that initial perspective or that journaling or that question, so powerful, so powerful. What are you excited about for? In the sense of your kids entering into this world. How old are they?
So I have an 8, 10, and 14-year-old.
Okay.
1 girl, 2 boys. And for me, that's fascinating, because parenting is such an interesting thing where I've learned maybe the main lesson around I won't call it successful parenting, but I will call it like maybe helpful parenting.
Sure.
Is that you can't really, dictate or, set rules or whatever it is if you're not practicing it yourself.
Yeah.
I've really observed in every, every one of my children is that they really follow what you're doing, right? And how you are. And so if you tell them like, hey, be more kind to others, right? For example, and you're not doing it yourself, it's,
it doesn't work.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you're, showing up, and what I'm doing is like, I have my, again, like my mornings and evening rituals and things I like to do. That's what they're following. That's what they really observe closely. And from time to time, my daughter, 8-year-old, she crawls up with me here in our little shed in the forest and like sits down with me on a cushion, right? Just to give it a try. And then after 30 seconds, we both like, laugh out loud, or like, we find it awkward or whatever it is. And it's funny. And then at the same time, when she goes to bed, she teaches me that she wants to share 2 or 3 things that really worked out today, right? So she shares her gratitude around the moments she could experience in the day, and also things that didn't go that well.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me, because that's what I can learn then from her, right? And so it's this giving and taking from each other, where there's no, in that essence, no top down like parenting at all. It's like it's a relationship you have, and like in every good relationship, being a role model and showing up, like you want to see the other person showing up, is probably the best thing you can do. And so I'm really, really careful, like when again, I wake up and you mentioned that example of like, maybe the kids didn't sleep that well, or like they're anxious about school when it starts, after the summer break or whatever it is, right? Just giving them a hug and staying in bed with them a couple of minutes and cuddle and talk about it, right, goes a very long way, right? And these are the small things that we can all do that really help to, talk about what's going on in your mind and how you're feeling, and what is something that we can do together, and it's incredible, and to see the kids that to show up with curiosity, right, more than we have as adults, because I think our curiosity just goes dormant, like in organizations when they grow up and get bigger and so forth. Like the curiosity is the thing that actually goes away. And so I'm really tapping into that curiosity of my children. And one story I want to share, which again tells me like the power of openness and curiosity that I talk about in the book, and how that really showed up for my oldest son, who is now a teenager with 14. And 3 years ago, he at school was put into drama classes, right? That was not an elective that he chose, but he needed to take it. So, it was chosen for him. We talked about it. He hated it. He said, like, I'm not a person who ever goes on stage. I don't want to play, dance, sing in front of an audience, not even in front of you. And so I totally understand and then could empathize with him, because I grew up exactly the same, like an introvert, like, turning red by every time the teacher called me and so forth. And interestingly, he found a small role he could do, actually not being in the spotlight, but working the lights behind the scenes. So he was the lights person in drama and theater. So that was something that he could do. Exactly. And then next year comes around, and he was not put in drama and theater again, because he's done that. But the teacher asked him, like, hey, we need a lights person again. You did it fantastically last time. Hey, Jonathan, can you do it again? So he volunteered and said, oh, of course I can do it. That's fine. It's a job that's easy. I know how to do it, and so forth. And then he observed his friends, who then took bigger and bigger roles on stage. And then end of that year, he actually applied for a very small role he wanted to play in that drama class. So he appeared on stage, very small role, couple of sentences he needed to say, and so forth. And then the third year comes. And I was shocked because he told me that he is applying for the main character in Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
And he went for the auditions and he got the role. And so third year, he appears in the spotlight playing, the Beast, dancing, singing, kissing, everything that he was not imagining at all a couple of years before. And we were in tears when we saw him on stage, as parents. And it was just a beautiful moment of the power of being open to situations, even if you're forced to do something. And how often do we judge immediately and say like, oh, I don't like it. I think it's not going to be something for me and so forth. Just be open, right? Be open for a couple of minutes, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and see what emerges. Maybe it's going to turn into your biggest, passion that you don't know at the beginning of when you are in these situations. And now he's in high school, and he chose, guess what, drama, as his major focus. But also he's doing that after school program, and it's just incredible to see that moving from something he truly hated, didn't want to do, to something that he now enjoys most in his life.
Such a beautiful story. And there's the openness, but I the other thing that kind of comes up for me when listening to this is not forcing someone down a certain path that they really don't want. Like he exposed himself essentially to being behind the spotlight, right? I mean, because I feel like that would be like, that's the key point in the story, is that like he spent a couple years actually watching what this is all about, and probably just made himself feel more and more comfortable. And like, yeah, my friends are doing that, I want to try this out as well. Versus if it was, okay, no, be open, but you're going to be like, get on stage and try it out and whatnot. That probably would have went the other way, right? Because that, like, for him, that wasn't his process.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I kind of comes to a point, I think that, I mean, you see this in entrepreneurship all the time as well. Like there are ways and there are recipes and there are strategies and stuff like that. If you follow them, they could lead you to a certain endpoint, but there are a million different pathways. And I feel like we just need to tap into our intuitive senses to see, okay, well, if I'm going to go down this route, like what feels most right for me, while keeping that lens of being open, of course, like that's the key point. And it's okay to take a different path.
Absolutely. And just discovering these opportunities, right? That might emerge in front of you that you probably can't see right now, but they're there, right? And I remember I took him like after the first year, when he started to do drama and just did the lights. I took him on a trip, so I was invited to speak on a big stage in Portugal. And he was in the audience and he was backstage, and I think he felt the energy that was in the room, and he also felt how nervous I am, right? Every time before going on stage. It's just a normal thing. And so we talked about it, and he shared like, he's always, he just anticipates that he's going to be very nervous if he needs to play a role in drama. And I said, like, that's totally normal. Like I'm nervous, and everybody's nervous, but that goes away. And the energy you can create in the room and afterwards is just, totally worth it.
Yeah.
Maybe that role modeling also shifted him to give it a try, right? So that combination of being open, our relationship in our family, the parenting that is not about forcing him to do something, but like just showing him like, what's the opportunity here and how can you see something like that, I think it's for me a great reminder that everybody can do that.
Oh, I wish we had another hour. We definitely, I had a feeling this was going to happen, just given how how obsessed I've been about the book and learning more and more about you. And it's just been such an honor to share this time with you and record it. I mean, I feel so grateful. I think we definitely need to do a part two one of these days, because there's so many other topics that we could have went down, and as the world evolves and so forth, there's no shortage of things to speak about. So I want to thank you for your time, for coming on, and then a higher thank you for just being you and following, your intuition. And I get the sense, and I'm sure, like you said at the very beginning, I'm sure you're not perfect at this, but I do really feel that seems like you do a good job living, the perspective and the intentions that you want to create for your future. And because of that, a lot of us are benefiting from that work. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Where can we follow? The book's available everywhere, but I mean, if you want to drop a link or anything like that, where should I point people?
Yes. You find me everywhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, just whatever works for you. If you want to, sign up for like a bi-weekly dose of inspiration, some stories, and some experiments, you can try too. I have a next letter. And so you can find that. Again, the book is available in all bookstores. And excited to hear from people. That's what gives me the energy to just keep going, like hearing the stories of people and how small shifts that they're doing in their lives, responding, more kind or more open, more curious in their lives, is just giving me more energy. And I would love to hear from people.
Yeah. Oh, I'll echo that. I mean, everyone listening, whether it's from the book or from your own experiences right now, I mean, please do share and tag us both on any of the social platforms. Any questions that you've reflected on, or any perspective shifts that you've had, and things that are helping you essentially live and create that future, that you want to live in. I mean, share that, because I really do think we need those reminders over and over again, because there's no shortage of the opposite of that kind of content around us. What's the science? I think it's, we need 3 positives that weigh 1 negative or something like that. So, please, this is the stuff to share. And of course, we'll reshare it. And then that ripple effect, I think, gives us more opportunity to speed up this movement, which is a good thing for all of us. So
absolutely. Yes. Thank you again. And just as a reminder, the question that I want to bring back, which we opened up with, is who do you really are, right? And how do you want to be in the future, right? I think these 2 questions are really important, and just move away from job titles or places you live in or the roles you think you need to play in society, and just trying to think about the impression that you will leave on this planet, the you print.
Ooh.
That is proof of your life. We all will remember people not with their job titles that they hold or held, that the places they lived in, but who they really were, right?
Yeah.
The people and how they showed up every day with people. That's the you print that you leave behind. And so keep that in mind. And you can start right now to shape that print. And I think it's going to be an exciting one for everyone.
I agree. Here's to the you print.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.